Hey guys, welcome to News Dump, and I have a very special guest, Mr. Nick Gregorio. You remember him from such. Well, you're on DC Daily now?
No, I'm just behind the camera now.
Okay, well now you're in front of the camera.
Now I'm in front of the camera again.
We're talking about some exciting stuff that everyone's gonna love.
I'm excited. It's good to be back. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem.
I stepped on your line.
I guess we should start off with the most obvious and ridiculous story in entertainment news this week. The petition that was started in order to convince HBO to completely remake the final season of Game of Thrones because fans are apparently pretty unhappy about how things are turning out. Now, just a heads up, my explanation, at least, of this story, it's going to contain no Season 8 spoilers because even though I've watched a few episodes with my wife, I have literally no idea what the hell is going on or why people are so upset. I mean, I saw them leave a Starbucks cup on the scene. The young one did a sex. The crippled kid, he just stares at everyone the whole time. I think I got it. I understand what's going on. But I'm pretty much lost on everything else because I'm not fully caught up on this season or about 75% of the show. But you might know. Why are people mad without spoiling the show?
Okay, I'm not going to spoil it. I'm just going to say it's fandom at it again. Modern fandom can never be happy with anything. Mm-hmm. If it's not exactly what they have thought up and concocted, all these theories, and I'm like, don't do that. That's the most dangerous thing you can do because it's not yours. Mm-hmm. It's not yours to rule. The reason you liked it in the first place was that it subverted your expectations. You showed up to watch some sword and sorcery fantasy show.
Or you had no expectations.
Or you had no expectations. Yeah. And they set it up for you, and they showed you something you weren't expecting. Game of Thrones, a lot of people will say was successful to a broad audience because they had sex and nudity and violence and plain speak and profanity. Backstabbing. Yeah. There was like high intrigue, but it was very grounded in its approach. It wasn't Lord of the Rings, which is kind of G-rated and very flowery. It was very hard-hitting and in your face. And they gave you some shit that was hard-hitting and in your face, and you're all bummed out because you thought they were Marvel. You thought like they would listen to what you were saying and be like, the girls win, and here's diversity.
So, having not seen the last couple episodes, I can only assume that's close to what's going on. But here's what's happening with this. The Change.org petition, which is totally going to convince a huge media conglomerate to scrap the entire final season and then pour tens of millions of dollars into doing it over again. The petition, it's summarized pretty succinctly, and it says that David Benioff and D.B. Weiss have proven themselves to be woefully incompetent writers when they have no source material, i.e. the books, to fall back on. This series deserves a final season that makes sense. Subvert my expectations and make it happen, HBO. To which HBO most likely replied, probably silently in a boardroom somewhere, go fuck yourself, dork.
One, I don't think they understand how insulting that is to everyone that worked on this project.
Yeah,
like the
actors,
teams and teams of people.
Yeah, like all the way down to like the people who worked in like craft services or stagecraft or VFX.
The country of Ireland and like what they benefited from these productions. Like everyone, no one sets out to make something that is subpar or that's going to upset the fans. If anything, they were probably like, man, the fans are going to love this. We're so proud of what we've done. Yeah. And it's terrible. It's terrible that everyone has a voice now and everyone has an opinion.
What's funny about this is what I think is going to happen with the end, because obviously they're not going to do this, but what I think is going to happen with Game of Thrones as a whole is, and this is just me spitballing, sorry if I'm offending people, but people are going to look back at this, however it ends, and 10 years from now are going to be like, you know what, I'm glad it went the way it did. It completely did things that made sense, and you know what? If it had gone the way that everyone wanted it to, it wouldn't have been as good as looking back on it. But the only thing I have it to compare to that I watched every episode till the end was Breaking Bad, and although like some things were kind of weird with the ending on that, it was fine.
But Breaking Bad I think took a safe approach. Yeah. Like they were like, no, Walter White is going to pay for what he did, and spoilers, he gets his comeuppance.
Are we going to get the Better Call Saul version of Game of Thrones?
No, because I think fans somehow got it twisted and they put a lot of their own either social agendas or their own biases on these characters, and ultimately it's a historical fantasy, and things never ended well. The story started off in turmoil with like Robert Baratheon taking the throne by blood and force, trying to rope Ned Stark into joining him in King's Landing.
Whoa, spoilers.
Yeah. Cersei was like, she had children with her brother and she was masquerading them as Baratheon. It was already
all right, we're losing like half the audience.
Sorry.
Let's okay. Anyways, despite the fact that this will absolutely never happen and that people will literally just have to deal with it, by the time we film this, over 550,000 people have signed the petition. And, right now they're probably setting fire to all their crows before hoes and snow in the streets, Tyrion in the sheets posters and t-shirts. They're going to have a big old Game of Thrones burning soon.
I have a theory that every time Tyrion pours a glass of wine cavalierly, David Benioff comes. That's the only way he can come. So that's why every single episode you get that. See, I'll take shots at the creators because I think they do some egregious shit, like making Tyrion always pour the wine and let me pour wine sillily.
The real victims here are Hot Topic and the other online media or online clothing outlets. They're going to lose all their business. All that fandom, gone in the blink of an eye. You really hate to see it, Nick.
IKEA, because they sell those sheep fur floor mats that everyone uses to make the Crow's costume cosplay. Yeah, IKEA is hurting after this.
Yeah, why doesn't anyone think of the merchandisers? God. Anyways, this whole Season 8 drama, it also doesn't bode well for another over-the-top fantasy world fan base. Star Wars fans. You knew it was coming. You might already know this, but if you don't, David Benioff and D.B. Weiss, the showrunners of Game of Thrones, they were recently announced to be making a brand new series of Star Wars films.
They're gonna nail
it. Listen, again, I have no problem with this, but it's the best timing.
I think it is. I think it's, I always have a Disney beef. I think somewhat, like some of the fans before have mentioned it, that I do have a Disney/Marvel beef. But
of course you do. You're on DC's payroll.
I am on DC's payroll, but I'm also...
Full transparency.
I am also a fan of the Warner Brothers approach to filmmaking, which is a bit more ethical. Like Disney fronts as this family-friendly, like where everyone should enjoy everything and be happy.
You saw Suicide Squad, right?
Oh my God. What? Yeah, well...
We're like oil and vinegar today. Wait, is that two things that don't go together? I think so.
Yeah, it's oil and vinegar. These new films, which are now destined to become the new most hated Star Wars films before they're even released, are going to be completely separate from both the episodic Skywalker saga as well as the recently announced trilogy that's being developed by Rian Johnson, according to the official Star Wars website.
Yeah.
In a statement that's hilariously awkward to read considering the recent Game of Thrones petition that called them hacks who ruined the most popular show on TV, Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy had this to say about bringing the duo on to helm their own trilogy. David and Dan are some of the best storytellers working today. Their command of complex characters, depth of story, and richness of mythology will break new ground and boldly push Star Wars in ways I find incredibly exciting.
Which is, if you read that while having the petition up on the other screen and all the tweets up, it's like every single word that she said is just like fans just...
They can't believe it. That's the house is burning and she's the dog saying everything is okay.
Yeah.
There's currently no date set to their film trilogy or Rian Johnson's trilogy or news of which would be released first. The studio heads have only indicated which years we would be getting new movies, 2022, 2024, and 2026.
Which, again, we should remind you, sounds like it's 100 years in the future, but it's right around the corner.
Right around the corner. I have children. I'm constantly reminded how old I'm getting as they just rapidly grow.
Set the dates of when they're going to see these. It'll be like, my daughter's going to be 10. It'll be great. Take her to go see the Star Wars.
It's really weird.
Well, moving on to hopelessly less decisive movie news, though, it looks like an entire new generation is going to get to enjoy what will most likely become another yearly tradition of new Saw movies sometime in the near future. Now, okay, if I'm being honest, I liked the Saw movies. They're not terrible, and it was also kind of nice looking forward to them almost every year. You could set your watch to it. And it was great. There's always new horrific puzzles, fucked up situations. It was always released at Halloween. It was great. What was wrong with it?
I really enjoyed Saw. I went and saw the first movie in theaters, and I was like, that was kind of fun. That was neat. It was an indie movie, so it had that spirit of we're doing weird stuff. And the death traps are clever.
Yes.
As much as anyone wants to hate...
They write the movie around the traps.
The death traps are really clever, and they're cool. And around Halloween, doesn't matter. It's one of those things. Everyone gets FOMO and wants to go to the theater and see some horror movies.
Well, the new Saw venture, it's already piqued our interest because of who's going to be behind it.
Who?
Chris Rock.
Get the...
He's a man that we love for his comedy specials in the 90s and who you love for his portrayal as the zebra in the Madagascar movies.
I like them.
Chris Rock, he's obviously a comedy legend, so it'll be interesting to see how he tackles this now iconic horror franchise. It is one of the top grossing horror franchises of all time now, so that's a safe thing to say. Iconic.
It is. Saul did what
As long as they don't give it to D.B. Weiss.
No.
Yeah, then we're all screwed.
I'm excited for them taking over Star Wars.
Oh, Saw Wars.
Saw Wars?
Yeah, no, I must have misquoted before.
So
They're taking
that's
over the
the
Star
Star
Wars universe. No, we're all safe now.
All right. So far, it looks like he's just involved in one movie that he's written the script for, which billed itself as a fresh reimagining of the franchise. In a statement, an executive for Lionsgate had this to say about the project. When Chris Rock came to us and described in chilling detail his fantastic vision that reimagines and spins off the world of the notorious Jigsaw Killer, we were all in. Saw is one of the highest grossing horror franchises of all time, and it's one of Lionsgate's most successful film series. This upcoming film will still be as mind-bending and intense as all previous Saw films. Chris conceived this idea and will be completely reverential to the legacy of the material while reinvigorating the brand with his wit, creative vision, and passion for this classic horror franchise. With Chris Rock himself added, I've been a fan of Saw since the first film in 2004. I am excited by the opportunity to take this to a really intense and twisted new place.
Holy fuck,
Were
Saw
they
came out
talking about
15 years ago, Saw
the
came out.
Catholic Church or a horror movie franchise?
I don't know, because maybe that's going to be tying into
Pomp and
it.
circumstance.
Yeah. Now moving over to TV news, everything's canceled.
Yeah.
Well, not everything, but yeah, it is the special time of year when some people's favorite network television shows are just wiped out of existence. And like every year before this one, the list, it's pretty long. Here's what shows are either being canceled this year, won't be renewed this year, or have already aired or planned their series finales either this year or next year. Deep
Are you
breath.
going to do an in memoriam? Like play like a nice, like, in the arms of...
If I can find something on our royalty-free little thing there, maybe. The Big Bang Theory, Blind Spot, Code Black, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, Criminal Minds, Elementary, Empire, nice, Fam, The Fix, For the People, The Gifted, Gotham, Happy Together, I Feel Bad, I Zombie, Jane the Virgin, The Kids Are All Right, Lethal Weapon, Life in Pieces, Love Connection, Madam Secretary, Marlon, Midnight Texas, Modern Family, Murphy Brown, The Passage, Proven Innocent, Rel, Reverie, Salvation, Shades of Blue, Speechless, Splitting Up Together, Star, Supernatural, Take Two, Timeless, Trial and Error, and Whiskey Cavalier, the show that literally launched this year by confusing and annoying everyone that was watching the Oscars.
That's a lot of shows. It's very telling because most of those were remakes or spin-offs of movies that no one asked for.
Lasted maybe 2 seasons. I mean, there's a bunch of like heavy hitters in there, like Big Bang Theory and stuff
Big Bang
like that.
Theory, Gotham. I mean, Gotham was an 8-season show, right?
Yeah, well, I remember you being very upset about how they ended Gotham. You know, these writers, they don't know what they're doing. Where's my petition?
I'll take a shot at Gotham. I've seen cosplayers with cheap costumes that look better than their Batman reveal. There's a ton of shows that have been officially renewed, though, and we won't go through the whole list, but here are some highlights. 911, American Idol, Arrow, The Bachelor, Blackish, The Blacklist, Black Lightning, Bob's Burgers, Brooklyn Nine-Nine, Charmed, Chicago Fire, The Conners, DC Legends of Tomorrow, Family Guy, FBI, The Flash, Fresh Off the Boat, Hell's Kitchen, Magnum P.I., MacGyver, Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., The Masked Singer, 3 NCIS shows, The Orville, Riverdale, Shark Tank, The Simpsons, Supergirl, The Voice, Will and Grace, and our boy, Young Sheldon.
Now, obviously, I'm most excited for Shark Tank being renewed.
What else would you watch on a Friday night mindlessly while you eat sushi?
That's, pretty much every night. There's hundreds of episodes by this point, so that's all I watch. It's a fun activity to go online immediately after you see a product and see if it's failed yet or not. Also, Bob's Burgers, obviously, still going strong. And I know that you're very excited that there's a couple DC shows on there still. So you still have a job to explain what's going on with those.
My show's a little different than that.
I don't watch it.
Okay.
Don't pay for the service. Can't afford it. In other TV news, another show that's still on the air, Arthur.
Based off of the Dudley Moore alcoholic vehicle?
No. Great movie, though.
Arthur the cartoon.
Arthur the cartoon.
Okay.
It's still apparently on TV. I watched the show when I was young.
Yeah.
It most famously spawned the Angry Fist meme. Everybody knows that. Nobody knows Arthur. They know the Angry Fist.
I read the book, son.
This is the show.
I read the books
from.
before the cartoon.
It actually, just this week, ruffled some conservative feathers by having the audacity to show a same-sex marriage during an episode. The character, Mr. Ratburn, who is in fact a rat, by the way, he's been a character since the show started, he recently married his boyfriend, an aardvark named Patrick. Now this, like most things, it made Some people happy. It made
Interspecies.
some people, yeah, pretty angry. Most notably, former White House aide and Breitbart editor Sebastian Gorka, he claimed that we are quite obviously in the midst of a culture war because of this. And we're almost positive that he's actually talking about the same-sex marriage part and not the interspecies marriage. But I mean, who knows? He could quite honestly be as upset about children learning that aardvarks can marry rats.
That's more disturbing to me.
Yeah.
Than anything. That is twisted that they would do that on a show.
Yeah, just it's insane. And
An
that they're
anthropomorphic rat marrying an anthropomorphic aardvark. That's not even.
It's just so sad, you know.
An
Pushing
aardvark is
interspecies
ants.
marriage on our children. Anyways, at least I'm happy that Mr. Ratburn's happy, so that's good.
That's the most important thing.
Yeah, after working on this show for what 25 years. He finally gets to settle down.
You know
and
who
marry
never
his
got that
boyfriend.
moment? Mr. Feeney, okay?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So
There you
Mr.
go.
Ratburn's out there, just,
Yeah.
man teacher characters that never got their...
Finally, Mr. Ratburn is like, he's
Happy.
been keeping this a secret for so long. He's like, one day, everyone will know that my best friend is actually my best friend. I can't wink, so I just blinked both eyes and turned my head. Anyways, let's move on from that.
Hey, here's some more good news. Remember that college admissions scandal? How could you forget?
Yeah.
Well, here's an update. According to the LA Times, our old boss, Semper Vivo,
Who is also your old boss too, yeah.
recently pled guilty to conspiracy to commit fraud and honest services mail fraud in a Boston courtroom as part of a deal with federal prosecutors. As part of the plea agreement, prosecutors recommended a sentence of 18 months in prison. That's a lot. That's a long time. I know everyone's like, fuck that guy. That's a long time in prison.
Especially if you're just a
Nerdy-ass dude.
dude.
Yeah. A fine of $95,000 and a year of supervised release.
Now here's the thing. It would be great if he was in the same prison as the rest of the internet today, like all-stars. Martin Shkreli, Billy McFarland, Steven Semper Vivo. We got to get Malachi shipped up there.
Oh. Did Billy McFarland go to jail?
Yeah, he's in jail.
did.
Him and Martin Shkreli are apparently friends.
Of course.
It's either him. There's two of them that are like hanging out. It's really weird.
Of course they are. They're listening to that Wu-Tang album, right?
And coming up with their next scheme.
Oh my God. It looks like he'll be sentenced sometime in September, but the biggest problem he's facing right now is the news that his son has been scheduled for expulsion from Georgetown University. And he's now suing the school in an attempt to stay enrolled. Felicity Huffman also pled guilty this week and is facing a slightly more lenient sentence of 4 months in jail and a $20,000 fine.
But she cried when she pled guilty.
And she could afford the $95,000 fine. I don't know, Steven Semper Vivo, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see where this all ends up, and we'll keep you posted.
Yeah.
It's tuning right here to let you know people we know going
the
to
court
jail.
news. Yeah, it's a story that we
Hard-hitting court
probably
news.
wouldn't have followed as long as we have if it wasn't so funny.
When I saw the picture, I was like, oh yeah, that dude. Yeah, that
Same
guy.
face every time, just jaw clenched, just
He's-
like.
I gotta say this. I don't care if you're going to Club Fed. Just go in a room, shut the door, and imagine staying there for 2 years or nearly 2 years. That's
You love to see it.
yeah.
As for trailers that we can't show you this week, there's a new trailer for that Chucky reboot. There's a trailer for It Chapter 2.
Woo.
There's some more clips of that live-action Aladdin movie that do nothing but make it seem worse.
Yo.
Yeah. It's
Yo.
Don't watch that clip.
Oh my God.
There's also a trailer for the next season of Black Mirror, so there you go, which Aladdin might be an episode of Black Mirror at this point.
It looks like a TV movie. The Prince Ali dance sequence, everyone just like, did they just learn the steps? They're like,
Also, it seems oddly slow.
It's really slow. It's really weird. It's not very cinematic. It doesn't look like because like, you imagine if you're going to do a live action musical, you take yourself back to like the musicals of the 40s that were these grand, like everyone could sing and dance. And I don't know what you get from Will Smith being the genie.
Well, I don't know. Movies aren't really usually, sometimes they are, but not usually filmed in like the order as the acts play out.
Yeah.
But if
That
I
could've
wish,
been day
I wish
one.
this one was, so that we could see at what point they realized that this was a huge mistake and just gave up.
They're like, because I mean, it feels like a give up.
Yeah.
It's not a good singing voice.
Anyways, if you're looking for something to watch now, John Wick 3, it's out in theaters. You're gonna get that same John Wick that you love. So not really a lot of risk here. You'll see it. And then obviously the season finale of everyone's new, most hated show, Game of Thrones. It's
I'm not even watching it.
this Sunday.
I'm not even going to watch it.
But maybe, just maybe, you should be watching Barry instead. A much better show that hasn't ruined itself yet.
Okay, Barry is a great show, and Game of Thrones is a great show. And sometimes you don't get exactly what you want all the time. And maybe you shouldn't obsess so much over things you can't control and enjoy them like you're supposed to.
You know what? It's good that stuff like Game of Thrones and Star Wars exists because this generation needs to learn that you can't always get what you want.
Yeah,
And
that's where they're going to...
The rise of social media and Instagram, they're looking at it like everyone gets exactly what they want. Well, guess what? Here comes Game of Thrones to fuck up your whole life.
No, and I think what you were saying is going to happen. Once it's canon, and the fans will go back and they'll rewatch it.
Like, wow, amazing.
I'm hard on that, I guess.
Yeah. Or they'll just shut up and talk about the next thing. Like as soon as Game of Thrones is done and it's like a month past the season finale, it's like, all right, guys, fire up your fingers. Time to talk about the rise of Skywalker.
There you go. Oh, God. I can't even deal with it.
Anyways, stay tuned for a new episode of Weekly Weird News right here real soon, and be sure to watch our older episodes. They'll pop up on the screen. Check out our Patreon if you want to support the show. There's a link in the description. We really, really appreciate it. Sorry that things have been a little bit thin since I went away to get married, and now Elliot's on his honeymoon. It's a lot
like a
doing.
Whole married crew now.
Yeah, I know. It's a lot doing. We're stretched thin enough when we're together, but yeah, one-on-one is even more difficult. But if you want to thank Nick for joining us, first of all, thank you, Nick.
Oh, thanks.
If you want to thank him, be sure to follow him on Twitter. We'll put that link in the description as well. That way you can read all of the hottest takes on the last episode when it airs Sunday night.
Dragonfire hot takes.
Yeah. Spoiling it live, just like everyone else online.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be back.
Yeah.
It's been a long time.
Yeah. What's your Twitter name, in case people can't read?
@NickGregorio.
They can only hear it phonetically.
It's @NickGregorio. If you don't know, now you know. Please don't say stuff like, who is this guy? I know you're going to say that.
Bye.